Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ed's Auto Garage. Again, this is Ed Arango coming to you live from within my garage here in Huntington Beach, California. I don't know where you guys are in the country or the world, but we feel here in Southern California like we live in Seattle, Washington. Today is the only day that we're getting a little bit of sunlight. But these last month and a half, it's just been rain and a day of sunlight, and then 3 days of hard rain and 2 days of sunlight. And then it's just been nonstop. Today's a little bit, apparently this weekend will be nice for us here, but it starts again on Tuesday. So apparently we're going to get some more rain. Let me see, what else do we have going on? Well, I think on future episodes, the look and feel of the Ed's Auto Garage podcast is going to change a little bit, because you guys are probably familiar and have seen on many of the podcasts the blue STI sitting back here. Well, I'm a little sad and I'm a little happy at the same time. Both of my sons, who are adults, both of my sons are moving out together. So this is Emilio's car here, my son Emilio, the oldest one. So it'll be gone. So I'll have more room. We'll see what kind of, crap Yvette wants to put in here. I don't know. But we'll see how that kind of works out. All right. Well, today we have a guest of mine is Kevin Mitchell. He is the cousin of a friend of mine, Craig Chamberlain, and Kevin was for a period of time a creative leader for Team One, which worked on the Lexus campaigns. And let me welcome Kevin here to the podcast. Thanks for joining me, Kevin. I appreciate you joining me here on the podcast.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good. Thank you, man.
The rain's been horrible.
It has, hasn't it? It's been over there where you guys are as well, right? You are in Redondo?
I'm in Redondo, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, do you guys are you close to the water where you can see, surges or the rain getting into the streets or anything like that?
Well, we're a couple miles away, but we've been down there a few times, especially for the high surf and stuff, to check it out. And because we don't see this kind of weather that often, so it's kind of interesting.
Sure is. I know. So yeah, for us too here, I mean, it's kind of a funky thing. So Kevin was kind of a pivotal person when it came for a number of years working with Lexus with some of their creative work and creative advertising and artwork that was being done. But before we kind of dive into that whole thing, Kevin, why don't you kind of bring us up a little bit up to speed on you, how you ended up kind of falling into this niche, this line of work. As a kid, were you all into graphic artists and photography or even cars? How did that all pan out?
I was actually more into cars and cars and trucks and car magazines and all of that, and had the trucker subscription and hot rod and stuff like that. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and where cars were king in California, and my friends had cars, and I had a friend who had a custom shop who built a 53 Ford pickup with the 427 full tilt front end, that kind of stuff. So, and I learned to drive on a bump side F250, and so it was around the old V8 Fords and just kind of loved the cars. I loved sort of the idea of the freedom of cars. I think, today kids seem like they don't really want to have a driver's license, although your kids seem to, but mine didn't.
Forced them.
Yeah. But when I was a kid, we couldn't wait to get our driver's license, and
Absolutely. Yeah. Once, that day, it was like a rite of passage for us growing up in our era where we turned 16 and that was the day we went to DMV to go
yeah,
get our driver's license. And I'm sure you probably did the same thing. I mean,
yeah.
um, did you growing up in SoCal, were you kind of and kind of into trucks? Did you get into the mini truck cars, scene? You know how mini trucks were kind of popular here, like the Datsuns and the
Yeah,
little
yeah.
Toyotas.
It's funny. I had friends in high school who had those trucks and stuff. I didn't have one then, but I got one in my 20s, which it was a Mazda, but it was totally slammed and had big tires on it and stuff like that, and rode like crap. It was horrible.
Probably like what were those like B2300s or B2000s or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember, but yeah, I just remember driving.
Yeah, just bouncing and all rigid to that.
It
So
didn't last long.
when you got out of high school, did you go into college or pursue a certain
Uh,
direction?
no, I wandered for quite a bit. I got into retail business to make a living, and kind of had to search myself out a bit, figure out that I was an artist. I thought I was going to be an architect initially, but I got turned out off of that world a bit. But so yeah, I did a little wandering, a little soul searching, as it were. Trained myself to be an artist and a writer. I have a degree in literature, and then said, well, if I could do anything, I was freelancing as a production artist later on as well, and that sort of showed me a world where I could be a designer, and so I took that up. I built a book and did all that, and did some freelance work at Foot Cone and Belding, who had Mazda at the time. So that's how I kind of got exposed to the car world, and the car world was exciting because it was cars for one, and then two, they had a lot of money, the car companies. So
Yeah.
it was good. They wanted to they wanted to be big. The car brochures is where I really cut my teeth in the world of the car world. So I did a lot of brochures, even as a production artist, and then eventually became a designer.
So the brochures, today you go into a car dealership and they don't have like brochures
Right.
anymore or hand them out to you anymore like they used to back in the day. Back in the day, I would, back in the 80s or the 90s, you'd go into a dealership and they'd have like a brochure for every little single model and every little thing and multi pages and really high quality. I mean, it was their selling tool.
Yeah.
It was what the mentality had to be that guy's going to take that brochure home, throw it on his coffee table, and it's got to look nice 2 or 3 days later, so that they kind of want to pick it up and hold it and the touch and feel and all that of it. So, I mean, you were all part of that era, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always, it's a tool to sell your significant others as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So it was an important piece of literature for the business. In fact, it was central to it. But it was weird because, places you'd work, or I was working, were advertising agencies. So they would have shorter sort of campaign of ideas, for a launch of a vehicle, but I would be responsible for doing sort of long-term imagery of the vehicles, that because a brochure life is like a couple years, even though they come out every year, that there'll be an updates and changes and whatever, but the typical shelf life would have been about 2 years.
And the
So
minute you guys were done working on one brochure, I can imagine that you guys didn't have very much downtime for the next
no, yeah,
reiteration of that brochure to come out. I mean, you guys had to continue hustling down the path. I mean, again, talking before, I'm talking about an era before, people could go on and Google and it pops up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a whole production line, involved with that. And with Lexus in particular, it started out, they had 2-3 cars, when I started, which was in 98. And actually my first involvement with Lexus was 96, and they had 3 cars, I believe. And then they released the GS and then the RX after that, in 98. And I worked on that as a production artist. And then I got hired as a designer in, I think, no, it was 98 where I was hired as a designer. Yeah. So then I was doing design work for the GS. And then my first launch campaign was the SC convertible. So
would they, as a designer, so just so that we kind of understand what in your world the term designer means, was it that they would give you the car or show you the car and go, okay, here's the car, you need to put a package around this car, that was your responsibility to kind of take that all on?
Yeah, we would create a world, for the car to live in. And that included, all the conceptual photography, and then also how the brochure spoke, so every year, or not every year, but when we would take on sort of redesigned for a set of catalogs, they all had, well, there was times where we were launching a vehicle, and then there was also, a brand statement that we were trying to make as well. So those things had to work in concert together. But yeah, typically when you're doing a full set of photography, and then also the type design and the layout work and the whole thing, it's a big kind of take on.
So like you would open these brochures, and let's say what was the LS was like the top of the line Lexus.
Yeah.
So you'd open a brochure of one of those cars, and you'd see a very glamorous couple in the car parked in front of some I don't know, opera theater with all the lights and everything, and it's just so focused on the car. You kind of had to orchestrate that, or?
Yes, exactly. So
wow.
So usually I would work with illustrators to sort of work out car angles and looks and stuff like that. And then we would, pull other photography to sort of show style or intent. So yeah, it was like creating these whole little worlds, and for a while it was like making little movies.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're trying to project to the public that, hey, this could be your lifestyle with this vehicle. You have arrived. Here you are. You have this, nice Lexus LS, and and it would always crack me up, like, not that it would crack me up, but I just, I can relate when you look like at a, I don't know, like at a Chevrolet pickup truck, like a 1500 whatever pickup truck brochure. And, there was always that one scene of the pickup truck pulling the trailer of the horses, in a beautiful Kentucky home or something like that, with stables and stuff. So that was kind of the allure that they would kind of try to project, and then also, you get to the back of the brochure, you'd get to like the samples of the little sample swatches of what the paint would be of the car. I mean, and that was like literally seemed to be like the actual paint, and some of those brochures on that.
There was a whole industry involved with just doing that.
Wow. The sample paints.
Yeah, the sample paints. And, they did it for appliance industry, and everywhere where there's paint. But that's a very sort of controlled and time consuming process that actually we would have to do those pages like 4 or 5 months in advance of the printing. So it's kind of funny. And now eventually it got so expensive, and then they sort of went away from it and went into doing it on print, so yeah, there was sort of this money contractual kind of thing happening over the years, as you can imagine, so.
How was the copy of the brochures created? Was that also your responsibility?
No, I worked with writers,
Okay.
so we would work specifically with a writer, and we would work out a concept on a book, and then my job would be to go off and do the pictures and do the layouts and that kind of thing, and then there would be a writer that would write, start to finish kind of thing.
Based on what you've created, they would look at your work first, then write the copy based on what you've created, or
no, because normally we're in parallel in development.
Okay.
So while I'm off, they're writing copy. They know what the picture is going to be generally, so, and the idea of the spread, what we're trying to communicate. So, yeah, they can work on their own.
Did you have to, in creating these brochures? I mean, did you have to, in a sense, create like storyboards to it, in the sense of like how the brochure would lay out and everything at the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning, I would do thumbnails. I've got tons of what do you call it? Little sketchbooks, and I would sketch out quickly, just as rough as I could, it's going to be this angle, here, do that kind of thing, just to get the ideas flowing of how it could be, and that kind of thing. And then those would just get developed more and more. And then, like I said, I would then go work with the illustrator who could actually portray the vehicles nicely and to sell to clients.
Did you have, now you didn't physically take the photographs yourself. You
No.
weren't the photographer.
No.
So were there photographers that you would kind of go, oh, this guy would be good to take this kind of picture, or
Yes.
I don't know, this guy may not be as good for that, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bidding process that you would go through. So there would be actually 3 photographers you'd have to identify, typically. And there's a whole business around making sure that your bids are competitive as well. But I would identify photographers, work with my creative directors, and we'd say, yeah, this is the direction we want to go. And then go through a bidding process, and there would be some discussion about how to achieve certain things. Especially in the old days, it would be, when shooting film was different than shooting digital. Digital gave you so much flexibility in composition immediately as you go, kind of thing. Film, you don't know exactly what you're getting as you go. So there was a real art to how to compose things, because you ended up, needing to compose things. I did this old, they did a platinum version partnership with American Express, and I did the shot of LAX. It was 3 cars in a kind of a train kind of thing, and it was a motion shot. So we had a rig on all the cars, and it had to be all composed. The first photographer I called on it said, "I don't even know how I'll do this," So this was 20 years ago. So yeah, those kind of things now are like, well, now they just ask AI to do it, but
were you also involved with any of the like commercials, of filming commercials and things for the vehicles
no,
themselves?
that was its own world.
That was his own world. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I preferred the print and the photography. It was just more interesting graphically to me, and I didn't really want to sort of move into that world. I probably could have had I pushed for that, but it had its own, its own thing. It involved a lot more people.
Kevin, you yourself, are you an artist? Can you are you a painter? Can you paint and stuff
Yeah.
people have that talent, some people don't.
No, yeah. I learned to paint and draw and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you're artistically inclined in that respect. That's good.
Yeah.
So that's why you'd be able to get the concept, the idea, and start sketching stuff out yourself real quick. And then that just kind of gets the juices flowing in your head of what direction this is going to go. Did you ever have the uppity ups kind of come back and never say, no, this is stupid, I don't want this, let's go this direction?
Oh, yeah. That's just part of it. Yeah.
That would happen.
Yeah, that would happen. I mean, as an agency, as a big agency, we don't want that to happen very often, so we want to be pretty buttoned up by the time we get there, but then we hear things from them, and so it was a conversation a lot of the times. So but they were, again, and the other thing is they depended on us to be able to bring them vision. They really did. So they weren't, for the most part, they weren't negative. But there was definitely people that had opinions.
So did you guys have to kind of get your thoughts and ideas down and then present it to some folks at Lexus and kind of almost sell them on it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we would, Lexus used to be down the street here in the South Bay. That's kind of the big Toyota thing was in Torrance here. So I would travel there 3 times a week, or, when we were really busy in season. But we would try and, first there would be a strategy. Every vehicle would have a strategy, and there's people that build those decks out. And so, the idea is to get your head bobbing up and down, right? And then we take back what they found, and then we would develop concepts around that strategy. And hopefully we were in the ballpark.
Was the work when everything was kind of settled and you guys were like, okay, we're off and running, we're doing our job now, was there still a lot of fires that had to be put out throughout any particular, at any time? I mean, was there little tweaks and changes that need to go that would kind of oh man, you're just throwing me back 2 weeks of work here or something like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it gets crazier than that. I mean, there were things that happened when we did, I'll tell you a story. When we did
stories are good.
The LC convertible, or the early work for that, the car was a red car, a red tag car. So you couldn't show the car in public, theoretically, right? So Japan actually asked for, specifically, they wanted to see the car on the coast and in different places and stuff like that. So we had a real car to photograph, and our video team thought it might be a good idea to have the car in downtown LA, and it got spotted, of course, because everything gets spotted, down there. And then it was on an auto blog, a V blog or whatever. And next thing I know, I'm slated to shoot the car in Northern California, and Japan's in full panic and very angry about the whole thing because the car got exposed. So I no longer could shoot the car anywhere, even though I was actually going to be up on fire roads in Northern California, where nobody's there kind of thing, and we can control the road. But they weren't having it. We couldn't show the car anymore. So we we were in a bit of a panic mode to make it all happen. But we ended up having to find a spot in Southern California to shoot the car at a private ranch. And then we use a stand-in on all for positioning in all the other shots, and then strip the other car out of it. So it was quite a like, oh my God, what are we going to do moment.
When you guys would go to locations to do these shoots, and let's say you had a car that wasn't yet, able to be out in the public, would you guys transport these on a trailer and all covered up, or inside a box trailer or something like that? Or
yeah, it's all box trailer. They never expose cars, even if they could. They usually have them, especially picture cars. They don't want them damaged in any way. So
when you say picture cars, you mean cars that are going to be in photographs, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while, it's funny. Every once in a while, we'll get, you'll be here on PCH, and you'll see that one car driving down that has that kind of zebra tarp covering it, where you can't tell what brand it is, and it's got the plastic all over the windows, and some guy driving it with like some computers inside it, and you go, they're testing this thing and they don't want anybody to know, but I can kind of figure out that it's a BMW or whatever car it is. But you still see that kind of, I see it at least 2 or 3 times a year when I'm in the morning going to work.
Yeah, they're out all the time. They want, and in fact, a lot of times they have press drive them as well, and those are, just wrap cars. They don't photograph well because of those patterns that they put on the wraps and stuff, and they're debadged, but those cars show up in the, different blogs and stuff like that. But it's not the same as actually seeing the paint and the full sort of presentation of the vehicles.
Do you ever think that they intentionally leak those out just to create hype in the past? Do you think that's ever happened like that?
Yeah, I think they have. We never did that because I don't know, that's not Japan style. But I think that's done on occasion.
It's kind of funny because every once in a while you'll pick up like a road and track magazine or something like that, and you're kind of, you're running through and you'll see, this is what we spotted with our, 15 gazillion zoom lens, out in some, through some field, and they'll catch some, this is the 2025 Lexus, or something like that they're testing, that some car paparazzi person took pictures of or something. But yeah, I mean, I would guess that, I think you're right. I would think that at times, there might be a little bit of that being leaked out. In this format, this brochure format, other types of, you worked on a particular project for Paul McCartney. What was that project, and when was that?
When was that? 2000. I think that was 2007. So they did a car for auction that was a Paul McCartney signature vehicle. And initially, it wasn't just given to us. We had to bid for it. So we had to concept and bid it against 5 other agencies. And it's funny, I was working at the time, my boss was Tommy Steele. And Tommy Steele was a creative director at Capitol Records for 15 years. He knew Paul McCartney. He knew his handlers. and he knew pretty much everybody in LA as well. But so we sort of worked together to sort of create the McCartney vehicle. So, and I did some graphic pinstriping stuff on the car, and we painted the Hofner, excuse me, the his famous bass, the Hofner bass, and the Vox, the Vox amp that he used. We used that for materials inside the car and stuff. It was good fun. It came out nicely.
So it was a Paul McCartney themed car, basically.
Yeah.
Got it. And you said they auctioned it off to some charity or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We
Interesting.
couldn't do leather because he was, again, he was a vegan and all of that. So we did faux leather and
Interesting.
we had a Shure 55 microphone as the shifter, and it was good fun. And then I got to do a CD for the thing as well. So
A CD? What do you mean by a CD?
remember those CDs that people used to have in their cars?
The CD players?
Yeah, not a player, but actual CD. So it was, with McCartney songs. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, is there been other vehicles or other brands that you've worked with in the car space, or has it just been primarily the Lexus brand? Did you venture into Toyota at all since you were part of that organization?
No, not really. I was on Lexus, the whole time. I did work on Cadillac this last year. I worked on their new brand looks. So did some brand books for them, but I didn't create the new brand. So I don't want to say that, but I did work on sort of extending it into different manifestations for them.
How you've been in the industry, what, 30 years, maybe
30
fair to
years,
say,
yeah.
how have you seen the industry change and I mean, other than computers and internet, I mean, what have been the biggest changes? Or
well, I think it kind of is, it was an analog world when I started, it was film and hand layouts and cut type and all of that stuff into the digital landscape, adoption of production and everything that went along with that. So it changed sort of the way you approach things and the timing that it took to do things. And there was definitely different skill levels involved with how you worked. And for some people, it was a tough, to go from film to digital. It was hard initially for some people because they were so in love with film.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that. But beyond that, the turnaround time of everything just shortened, drastically. And then the way the car business kind of changed as well. Obviously, the internet changed everything with how you visualize cars, and the most important thing was still photography on the internet, but the visualizers themselves became really important in the buying process. So, most what they're trying to do is funnel you into building your own car online now, and which is fun. I think people spend a lot of time doing that. I do at times. So
sure. It almost kind of seems, and it seems that we're seeing it more and more with some of these newer companies that have come into play, like obviously like Tesla and like Lucid and Rivian and some of these new car companies that just don't have dealerships.
Yeah.
I mean, Lexus has dealerships, and and every basically everybody else pretty much has a dealership. But now you just, if you physically want to touch and feel and smell a car, you usually go to the mall.
Yeah.
And they'll have like a kiosk where you see the car, and then you can at least touch it and see it there, but you go home and order it and kind of set up the car how you want it online. And so I think that whole car buying experience is changing dramatically in the sense of, when we were kids, your dad and your mom and dad would say, okay, it's Saturday, get in the car, we're going to go down to Avenue of the Cars, and we're going to hit 3 or 4 car dealerships and see which one we like, and you just don't do that any longer.
Buyers are a lot more aware. They have a lot of information before they ever get to a car dealership.
Yeah.
And so unless they're old,
like us, no.
Typically, you've done your research, and you rely a lot more. A lot of people rely on third-party information. That's become really big. These guys that do their car reviews, they go through every little detail of the car on a YouTube and stuff. They get a lot of influence, and the companies themselves realize the kind of influence they bring as well, and they sort of try to cater to them. They bring them stuff, or it's become a kind of an industry in and of itself.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, it is, you're so right on it becoming an industry of itself, because there are people that are like auto journalists that are becoming television celebrities because they're journalists.
Exactly.
And they're giving their reviews and their opinions on cars, and I know I had done about a year ago, I had done a podcast with Dave Coons here in the LA area. He's the auto guy on KABC on Channel 7 News.
Yeah.
I mean the car dealers, the car manufacturers, will go and dump cars at him so that he'll talk them up to this market.
Yeah, absolutely.
And review it and put it on the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, news here in our Southern California market, and talk about, hey, the Lexus RX, all wheel drive, blah, blah, blah. And he just, had it, it's a wonderful car and it rides great. And, and they talk it up. So, they're constantly, throwing the product to them. So that's one way that the print ad or the print brochures have kind of taken a back seat to that. And of course, like you were saying, the digital world has changed so much. And and the digital world now, as well, is that, they can, those sceneries that I was talking about earlier, in front of the Opera Theater with the car and the fancy people, they can basically create that illusion, with Photoshop and software and what have you.
Yeah. Well, now what's happening is sort of the GPU revolution, I'll call it, which is, sort of the gaming industry level computer performance being more consumer available. So GPU rendering is instantaneous rendering. And so you've got things like Unreal Engine, where you can be in very cinematic kind of places visually that are completely digitally created. There's no reality in the projection of that kind of space, yet it feels like you're driving down the road, and And then you can change your car color instantly, and or it can go straight into Grand Theft Auto world.
Hey, I'll tell you, my kids, my guys will play some of these car simulators. And if I walk into the room and I happen to catch it, I'm like, what are you watching? And they're like, I'm not watching anything. This is a video game. I'm like, what? Because you can't, it's kind of sometimes it's almost hard. It's crazy. It's hard to kind of tell. Every once in a while you can tell maybe a little bit with shadowing, but outside of that, everything else, they're just getting so precise with the higher end ones, obviously, but they're getting just so precise. Um, what do you think? What do you think the future of this is gonna look like? I mean, what do you think that
I think
the advertising, the advertising side of this for automobiles will end up being or continue to grow to be?
I think some of it depends on where the metaverse goes, and the virtual goggle things and all of that. I think there will be sort of a happy medium between wearing these silly things, and versus maybe something more glasses like that actually can give you sort of a similar experience. So it's definitely becoming more virtual. I think the information is going to be literally at our fingertips. If it's spec information on a vehicle, it will show up virtually in these spaces. As far as that kind of reality, which isn't reality, it sort of opens the door to anything, right? It's wherever your brain can take you, or your the people projecting it can take you. So I'm not sure totally how that all plays out. It is kind of a wild blue yonder, but definitely, augmented reality is happening. Being able to see certain things through your phone or different devices that aren't there.
I think what's happened as well too, in being able to kind of in that virtual reality, the day will come where, I can put on something and I can physically feel like I'm standing in front of the car I may be buying, and I can walk around it and not necessarily have to see it in person, but I think I'm seeing it in person because I've got this stuff in my face. But I think that's what's already started to happen ever so slightly is, back in the day when back to us being kids, we go to a car dealership, and after your dad's spoken to a couple of people for a couple of minutes, it's like, hey, can I take the car for a test drive? And I think today, with some of these newer, more sophisticated, maybe electric cars, I don't think there is that urgency or that need to necessarily take the test drive. The car is going to be good. The car is going to be what you anticipate it to be. I mean, I can remember where, times when, you go for a test drive and my dad would go, I don't like the way that one feels. I like the way this one feels better. I think they're just going to be, they're going to be utilitarian in the sense that they're all going to feel kind of the same brand. They all, they'll all feel the same. So it doesn't matter which one I get into. It just, just kind of take it.
Yeah. I think that goes back to how much information there already is out there, third-party information about how a car is going to drive, or these ride-alongs that these guys do, and they can talk really specifically about the characteristics of the vehicle. So people have a pretty good idea, where before you do want to sit in the car, you do want to get the smell of the car, how's this feel? What, the shifter and all that. But I don't know, especially with electric cars, they all feel
A little
uh,
disconnected.
little disconnected.
Yeah. It's funny. It's electric, but it's disconnected.
Yeah.
Hey, so what advice do you have for, let's say, a young person coming into this field, or knowing that they may be artistic, creative. I'm young. I love cars. Um, what, and they may want to kind of steer themselves into a graphics field within the car industry. Do you have any suggestions or tips or anything like that for folks like that, for kids that might be thinking of this?
Well, it's important, I guess, to have talent, and be able to demonstrate your talent to um, your audience. But the car industry itself is just one place to express that talent. But it is, I guess, as I'm mumbling about this, it's a place where you want to be able to talk to people and be able to present your ideas, because it's a big group of adults in the room, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be able to speak to them in ways that they can understand as well. Because part of all of this is, it's important that you're that you function in a way that is inclusive of other people, yet also your ideas get across. There's it's a relationship thing as well as a talent thing, I guess.
Is it very corporate-y? I mean, in the sense of uh, of how the function within the larger car manufacturers carry themselves today. Let's say, maybe, I'm sure it was a lot more corporate-y back in the 70s and 80s and what have you, but is it still very, very
Yeah.
uptight?
Yeah. I mean, it's not uptight as it was,
Yeah.
but it's still very corporate. There's a lot of people that answer to someone else.
Yeah.
So just getting everybody on the same page and making sure where you're going with things is relatable, and desired. So there's tons of talent out there now, tons. It's pretty incredible. And this GPU sort of rendering world is just now really taking off. So the 3D guys are able to do car imagery that you really can hardly tell it's not a photograph, and so that world is kind of opening up things to young creatives in a way, because they have the time to sort of master these tools,
Mm-hmm.
and they are kind of the entryway into that world, because that world desires people who can do that, so, because photographers are expensive, because that's a whole thing in and of itself, so when you can sort of do things that come real close to what they can do from your bedroom, it starts to change the game. And believe me, agencies are looking for that kind of talent, for sure.
Kevin, if somebody wants to see some of your work, or learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way for them? Do you have a website that maybe you could
Yeah.
you can tell
My
us about?
full name is kevinandrewmitchell.com. So there you can see some work done over the past I'd say 6 or 7 years. So yeah. and then you can email me from there.
Now, you right now are doing freelance work.
Yeah, I'm freelancing right now.
So, is it strictly within the auto space, or do you go outside of the auto space as well?
I did a little bit of Apple TV, and yeah, some Apple Fitness as well. But primarily, I've been in the car world. That's my my strength, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right, good. So, hey, thank you so much for hopping on and spending a little bit of time here and kind of, giving us a little insight on that whole process, which was really kind of interesting, to be honest with you. Again, thank you, man. I appreciate spending some time here. And again, if anybody wants to check out Kevin's work, it's Kevin Andrew Mitchell at .com. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So kevinandrewmitchell.com, and you can see some of his work on his website. Kevin, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time, and we will talk soon. Thanks
all right.
again.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. Bye.
Bye.